Hello, Whitefish. Well, it's the middle of August, arguably the most challenging time of the year. Forest fires rage on, lake levels are in decline, and those four-seater UTVs, reserved exclusively for dropping off the grandparents at Sunday brunch, now sit alone, for sale, in the parking lot of the local gas station. Point is, we all have our troubles right now, and some are arguably bigger than others. But that's why, as Montanans, it's important for us to check in on our neighbors from time to time and see how everyone's doing. On today's episode, we're checking in with our neighbors from the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes. Patrick, Yawakie, and Erica Shelby are extraordinary community advocates, working to better life for the CSKT, Blackfeet, and all the other great tribes from our state. We talk about everything from culture to the impact of climate change on our water systems, to the heartbreaking crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women. A terrible situation that we all need to hear about and take seriously. There's a lot we can learn from our tribal neighbors, and I'm excited to have many more conversations with these remarkable individuals. Today's episode is brought to you by Thrivers Coffee. Thrivers Coffee is an organic, fair trade blend roasted right here in Whitefish, Montana, with all profits going to combat human trafficking. Visit thriverscoffee.com to order your coffee and make a difference in the fight against human trafficking. Welcome to Hello Whitefish. Would you guys mind introducing yourselves and tell us a little bit about where you're from?
Yeah, my name is Patrick Yawakie. I'm a Zuni Pueblo enrolled member, but I live on the Flathead Reservation. I'm CEO of Red Medicine LLC, also the Food Sovereignty Director for People's Food Sovereignty Program.
Awesome.
I'm Erica Shelby. I also live on the Flathead. I'm an enrolled Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribal member, and I also am a tribal legal advocate.
Awesome. I'm really excited to have you guys here because oftentimes here in Whitefish, we get focused on the problems happening in our community and forget that there's other communities in our beautiful state that also have their own issues. And I think it's a good time for us to start bridging some bridges or creating bridges amongst our communities to see how we can help each other out. So
Absolutely.
I'm grateful you guys are here. If someone was to move to Northwest Montana and didn't know anything about the tribes of the area, who are the tribes of Northwest Montana?
When we're dealing with this area, we have all different kinds, coastal, different, meeting the mountains, meeting the Plains Indians right here in Montana. So we have 8 recognized, 7 federal, 1 state?
No, 8 federal
8 federally recognized? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then so on this side of the mountains, we have the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes. We also have the Blackfeet. And then on the other side, we have all the 6 others. So Crow, Northern Cheyenne, Fort Belknap, which has Ani and the White Clay and the Nakota. And then we have Fort Peck. Who am I missing here?
Rocky Boy and Little Show.
Little Show, yeah.
Awesome. Montana is experiencing a huge boom of people moving here that have never really been anywhere rural, anywhere where there's so much land and so much different culture. And I was actually asked earlier this summer what a reservation is. Someone came up to me and they're like, we heard there's reservations and we don't know what that is. What can you tell us about the history of the reservation system?
Like with Western expansion, Americans' Western expansion, there was the Transcontinental Railroad. The U.S. Department of Interior assigned Isaac Stevens to create these treaties with tribes along that pathway to ensure safety for the construction of the railroad, and this created these reservations where tribes ceded major portions, millions of acres of their traditional homelands, and were forced to reservations. These certain allotments of land that these tribes could not leave, and they were forced to those reservations. And there's other policies such as like homesteading, which allowed non-Indian farming homesteaders to, find plots of land, surplus lands in these areas where they could start their farming operations. But then there's the Dawes Act, which even further checkerboarded or divided up the lands, claimed that there were surplus lands on reservations, and would create state fee lands and then federal trust lands. And the trust lands were tribal we were non-tribal. They would force these Native people to live right aside these non-Indian Christian farmers in a assimilation to try to assimilate these tribal people to become Christian farmers. This was all just federal Indian policy that still affects us today. Definitely on the Flathead Reservation, where the tribal membership and tribal community are roughly around 20% of the total population, and a minority on a reservation.
The reservations are almost getting gentrified, is a way to look at it.
Definitely with the influx.
I mean,
of
that's
people,
assimilation and gentrification. They're pretty parallel.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about assimilation, a lot of those policies, what they do, you can just look at all the policies he's describing, and it went from reserved for our exclusive use and benefits, and then they don't go away. They're still trying to assimilate us, but it evolves. And to this day, it's still evolving. It hasn't gone away. And we're still being assimilated, as far as I'm concerned.
And then you have like massive amounts of land that are being privatized as well. So it seems like there's even less access, with certain individuals with insane wealth just buying hundreds of thousands of acres in Montana.
A lot of it on our Aboriginal land, that, these land cessions he was talking about, that how we got our reservations and the treaties in the first place. And that's, our territories that we used, whether it be culturally or for our foods and medicines or what have you. So, yeah, it's kind of a slap in the face when we, hear about these huge land grabs, from non-Indians on our lands and, so.
Definitely when like pop culture is also promoting this rhetoric, through like the television show Yellowstone, where rich ranching landowners and their conflicts with native tribes and the whole process. But
it also romanticizes it.
Yeah, romanticizes it. And then, but also, in my experience in the area, there's been a lot of people that are also moving into the area, lower income, who are escaping climate devastation in their communities, lack of jobs or failing economies. And this area is they claim to be God's country, but this is the homelands of the people who have lived here forever and understand the importance of this area in terms of like fresh water, and the mountains, the resources that this area provides. That this is something that we try to protect, I think,
Yeah, we were never, from our perspective, we were never owners. We're stewards of this land. Yeah.
A huge distinction. But there's been some wins. So you guys have been able to take over the Ker Dam, and that's a huge win. And tell me about the memorial that's going up for people who's lost their lives during the construction and whatnot.
So it's an acknowledgement. I think that was, way overdue. My great aunt Kathy actually kind of started this about 10 years ago. We got a hold of Energy Keepers, our corporation, and, they agreed that this was long overdue because her dad was actually killed in one of the rock slides. And his dad was one of what we call a sub-chief. So our head chief was Chief Custada, but this was one of his Kootenai sub-chiefs. And so for us, it was a big sacrifice, and we had never really honored that sacrifice. When Frank Kerr, when FERC, when it was, we all owned it, there was never, honoring that. And you're talking the 30s. So, I think we're coming up on almost an entire, century. Yeah. And, and there was non-Indians killed in it as well. And I think it's one of those things that we have to acknowledge because it really brings us together. Yeah. And in the end, that we can turn it into something good that helps everyone here. So
what was the process? Do you know the process of the acquisition of Ker Dam? I mean, that's can't be something that's very cheap to do.
Well, no. I mean, we had saved, I believe, $32 million by that point. And then when it actually went to court, the price they gave us was only $14 million.
Wow.
Yeah. So we were able. Yeah. So we had a lot left over. Iki, has replaced the turbine, which is not very, it's not cheap. Yeah. So we've had to fix it up. We're completely. There's a vista point, and that's where I think 50,000 tourists see it a season. It's not, like Yellowstone size, but it's still a pretty good amount. So we're repairing that whole Vista Point. We're putting in some more things, so we are doing repairs that are, were badly needed. I think when people found out, like, oh, the tribe is going to take it, all of a sudden, all the maintenance stopped. And so, but we got it for a good price. We had it was arbitration. Yeah. So that judge went ahead, and it was a shock that it was, so we ended up acquiring it in 2015. Yeah. And we
amazing.
Had way more saved. Yeah.
Yeah. How's the pool level right now? Obviously, we know that Flathead Lake is well below pool. Lowest it's been in a long time. Yeah,
I wish it was like a faucet that you could just turn on and, but unfortunately we predicted this last fall when we said, we're not getting the snowpack, and they're predicting a pretty wet spring. That's going to melt a lot of it really early on. And unfortunately, we can't not keep our floodgates open. We have to keep them on a little bit just to protect the river habitat and everything. It is a regulated system now. Back in the 90s, when they had it, it wasn't regulated. So they're used to being able to, but that messes with habitat and stuff. So we're a little more conscientious of that as a tribe. But also we've had a lot of conspiracy theories about, what it is. So what it is climate change. Last year we were overflowing. We had so much. So it's going to get more unpredictable just because of climate change. So
fire seasons are all wonky. Fire seasons are a lot longer.
Yep.
I had a friend of mine who's a wildland firefighter, and we were looking at the numbers. Since they started recording it in 1983, the amount of fires kind of is all over the place, but there is such an increase in amount of acres that are burned. Like back in the day, it was like 1 million, 2 million, maybe 5 million. And now we're having it's not uncommon to see 10 million acres burned in our wildfires now.
Yeah.
And it's like those numbers don't lie. Yeah.
And I think it's also, there's like a culture of, when you see a fire, put it out.
Yeah.
But the tribal people have been maintaining and, like she said, stewarding this lands, forever, where they're taking care of the forest, picking up debris and, collecting that, or, controlled fire burns.
Traditional ecological knowledge.
Yeah.
Does a lot of prescribed burning. We know that burning was important to, the health of this area that we don't do.
Yeah, and so it's like, I think I think also Trump said give them all rakes or something like that back a few years ago. But
rake up the leaves,
rake the forest,
forest, yeah. And, but the reality is there needs to be this, this stewardship with the forest. We can't just let them, go natural, and then allow the fuel to build up. And we're seeing this fire.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be more attention, and I know fire season is an occupation for a lot of people around here, but the devastation that it brings, is, I think, we're seeing it firsthand.
And actually, we would cover up for that. It wouldn't be an economic deficiency, because when you have prescribed burnings, what we've always done, you have those same firefighters being able to be employed all year round.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. When COVID hit America, hit the world, everyone dealt with it differently. But the tribes dealt with it in an interesting way. How did the Salish Kootenai and the Blackfeet deal with it? That's really interesting conversation.
Yeah, so we work for an organization, myself, and where we worked with the CSKT tribe and we use COVID funding to assist in these testing facility sites throughout the reservation. And this was kind of spearheaded by then Governor Steve Bullock. It just showed the capacity that we could take on in times of crisis, and definitely around illness or pandemic situations.
Yeah.
And then I know the Blackfeet really asserted their sovereignty by shutting down the reservation and then requiring masks within the reservation borders. I know there was a lawsuit too between them and the state of Montana, and the tribe won. And so it's like, it was a good opportunity to see, test our capacity, but as well as, where we're at in our decision making within our reservation borders.
That's amazing. So it really strengthened the sovereignty.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. That's amazing. It's amazing what a community can do when you really put your mind to it. Yeah. How has the housing boom affected the Flathead Reservation? You know, we have a terrible affordable housing issue here. Has that been a problem on the Flathead Reservation?
I know there's a lot of homeless Native Americans that live on the reservation.
Yeah.
Which, you know, when we're talking about being a minority, like that's the reality of these families, you know, that there's not enough stock in the housing supply in the area. Also, you know, when you got politicians such as Greg Hertz, who's promoting Airbnbs and you know, this tourist community, you know, like it's an area that we feel the effects of Airbnbs and, you know, those short-term rentals, and that leaves a lot of the Native Americans who, you know, that's their rightful home to be homeless.
And you said only 20% of the Flathead Reservation are actual tribal members.
Tribal community members. CSKT, I think the last numbers that I saw that they put out a report was approximately 6,800 tribal CSKT tribal members living on the reservation. And but there's a whole kind of like gray unknown about Native Americans who have come to the reservation to receive an education at Salish Kootenai College, who intermarry with CSKT tribal members, or find jobs in the community, work for the tribe, work for other entities in the area, that they find home here. And I think the recent tribal, or the current tribal chairman, stated that there was approximately 65 different tribes represented in the local K through 12 education system in the area. So
65 different tribes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that, you know, that CSKT Flathead Reservation is home to a lot of different tribal people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that common, or is that kind of unique to the Flathead Reservation to have that much tribal diversity?
Well, at one time, we were more of a refuge. And the reason that it's Confederated Salish was because there was, you know, we had all of the bands of Salish here at one point. But we also had, you know, Cree, we had, I mean, I could just name a bunch of tribes because they could come here and then they would get refuge from the Kootenai. The Kootenai were a warring tribe. They were more like the Nez person, Chief Joseph. And so that's what we tried to do. Our chiefs even adopted some people in who, you know, we have council members who actually don't have any of our blood in them, but their grandpa was adopted into the tribe by the chief, so that's how they're able to carry on generationally. So it's an interesting if you can dive into it. Yeah, if you've got another 4 hours.
Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna have you guys back for another episode.
Yeah,
I'll come to you guys next time. So that's interesting. And I think that kind of is a good segue with people coming here and just so awestruck by Montana. I mean, you go to Browning, and I think that's one of the most beautiful places in the park.
Yes.
Arguably is like the east side. And like the Mission Mountain ranges are just gorgeous, and people are just always so just awestruck with it. But there is a pretty terrible, sad underbelly to what's happening on some areas, whether there's this Bighorn, the Flathead, is the problem with missing and murdered Indigenous women. I'll read this interesting part of this stat. According to an article written by Adrienne Horton for The Guardian, Montana has one of the worst missing and murdered rates for Indigenous women in the country. According to a state report from 2017 to 2019, Indigenous people comprised of just 6.7% of the population, but accounted for 26% of the missing cases. Can you break that down, and what does that mean? Yeah,
and in 2021, I'll just add to that we were 30%.
30%.
Yes, of all the missing cases.
So I think to put that in perspective, I kind of came up with this. I was playing around with the numbers. So like in Bighorn County, in which 65% of the population identifies as Native American, it had the worst rate in the state. By the time Selena Not Afraid disappeared on New Year's Day in 2020, she was the 28th. She was at least the 28th missing Indigenous woman in the county of 13,000 people. Now, Whitefish has a population of 10,000, so that's kind of close. If we had 28 people go missing in a year, people would be like losing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the math just for the MMIW movement, just for the gender violence against Indigenous women, missing, murdered. So if we just use the stats from 2021 on that, that would be like this in 1 year, Charlotte, North Carolina, disappearing or being murdered. Oh. So then that's our 15th biggest city in America. The next year it would be like San Jose. The next year it would be like Fort Worth. That's how big this is. You guys would definitely notice then. But because we're a small minority, we're less, we're 1% of the population of America. So you can't see it as well. But per capita, it's a crisis. It's a huge crisis.
That is shocking. I mean, if there's a level of systemic injustice that's happening, this is like a perfect example of it. So, people can say there's no systemic injustice in this country and it's all a myth. You can't argue with that. So how do we identify, is there a way to identify what the cause is? A lot of it probably is human trafficking. We have a huge human trafficking problem in this country. Can you tell the story? What happened with, is it Mika Running Wolf? Mika.
Yeah. Mika Westwolf.
Westwolf, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Was a 22-year-old young woman, really promising, lived on our reservation, but was a tribal member from Blackfeet. She was walking home one evening on our highway, and as far as we know, was struck and killed by a vehicle. So I wasn't able to come on until 2 weeks later. We had let the parents start mourning and start the grieving process, but we didn't know how serious this problem was until we got there. And when we got there, we realized, okay, yeah, exactly what you said. This is systemic, and there's so many factors that go into the problem, right? Because when you don't hold people accountable, predators find these spaces and they thrive in these spaces. And when we, there's a website that shows your worth in the media, and they call it missing white woman syndrome. Oh. So when Gabby Petito went missing, for instance, all over national news and stuff, but this is a daily thing that happens, and you don't see our people all over the news. There's no media following because we're not worthy technically of that media. So there's a lot of factors that go into why the MMIW has perpetuated. There's also the Justice For movement. People don't get justice. There's lack of justice in all BIPOC communities, mm-hmm. But Native Americans, we have the highest rates when it comes to, like, say, the Black Lives Matter movement. The reason that we went with them is because actually Native American men have the highest rates of police brutality. So you combine all of these things that are happening within the justice system and no accountability, then yeah, we got some big problems. And it just, like you were saying, the backdrop of this beautiful plush place, and we have all these people coming here, but we really do need to start, having allies. We need to let these people know what's really happening here.
What are some of the problems that are keeping these cases from moving forward, or just like these investigations just take so long to get started? It seems like. Does it have to do just with like the justice system of Montana? Yeah.
So what I'm finding out is the pain is that I have to sit down parents and let them know that their child was not worthy of a proper or comprehensive or thorough investigation at all. But on the other side, we're finding, which is why we're asking for a federal probe, we're finding that when it's a white victim, a non-Indian victim, and an Indian perpetrator, they're swift, they're max punishment plus 5 years, and so that's why we're also overrepresented in our state penitentiary system, where we're just 5 to 7% of the population. We're 25 to 30% of our prison population. So, yeah.
Also, this is coming at the same time. The murder of Mika Westwolf came at the same time. The state legislature was arguing over continuing in this outdated policy called Public Law 280, which allows the county to have certain criminal jurisdiction over the tribal community that resides within the Flathead Reservation. Representatives such as Joe Reed, who represents portions of Ronan, Tuarli, fought to try to get money allocated for previous years of this encroachment on our jurisdiction, and then also trying to guarantee future funding for this the next 25 to 30 years, and it was around $97 million that they were asking for.
Public Law 280 is a termination policy. And it gives authority to the county because in 1885, because of the Major Crimes Act, Indians aren't allowed to try the high crimes. And so it gives them the power. So if your county doesn't like you because of your race, then we deal with a lot of issues. Our jury selections, everything.
It's been a, just experiencing firsthand how individuals such as the Highway Patrol lead investigator, Wayne Bieber, or the county attorney,
James
Lapaka, seeing, their story change about how their focus on these cases, their involvement or their lack of investigation for these cases, and definitely stacks of Native cases compared to non-Indian. And then also seeing firsthand, not just Mika Westwolf, but like individuals like Saul Weaselhead, who wasn't, if their family didn't fight hard enough, wasn't going to see justice for Saul.
Black Weasel.
Black Weasel. And
Mina
Saul
Two Teeth.
Mina Two Teeth.
Sonia Spotted Blanket. I mean, we could go on. This is we're so desensitized to it, but when we tell outsiders, they're just kind of shocked, like kind of have the look you have now.
We took our march for Micah. We started in Arlee and walked to the courthouse, and all along the way we stopped at individuals' sites where they were killed along the highway, and it puts a reality, a face to these cases, and the grief that these families still hold today, and are trying to heal from.
The shame too. We found out on that walk with doing, highlighting these other cases. That's what Carissa, Micah's mom, wanted. And when we did that, we found out that the same Wayne Bieber, who we mentioned earlier, and James Lapaka worked all these cases and told all these parents the same thing. Pretty much just gave them so much shame that if they tried to fight this, it was going to be embarrassing for them and their kids, And so we got some systemic issues, and that's what we've been working to solve ever since.
How do we get a new ground of people behind these badges?
Well, I mean, it takes the advocacy of the community, and in the case of the Public Law 280, individual tribal members showed up at the Capitol and provided official testimony, and it's like really believing in the process, and participating when you can, and trying to create a better world. Like what Erica is doing as an advocate, MMIW advocate, is relatively new. That's a position that never existed in the past.
Oh, wow.
And so, it's participating, in your community in a way that you're offering the skills, abilities that you have to solve the issues at the grassroots level, I think.
It sounds like it's a lot of just education. I was reading that article, was it Shane Morgeau, when that representative from Kalispell introduced that legislation in January trying to dissolve the reservations. Shane wasn't having it. I read the before and after when he was like, Shane educated me a little bit, and then Shane's like, I'm going to introduce legislation that every elected representative has to get education in tribal history and culture and whatnot.
I was proud of him. He was very professional about that, because I knew that it strikes a chord with all of us. I can't even listen to rhetoric like that. But I think Shane approached it at a professional level, and he's right that there needs to be some cross-cultural education here. And I just truly believe that this is one of those places where there's more than enough resources, there's more than enough that we can all be living good, and that we should all be living good next to each other. You know?
Totally.
That day, that Friday, was my first day at the Capitol, and having to educate people isn't necessarily like part of the gig,
the lobbying job.
And we had to do a lot of that, and there's certain programs that exist, part of legislative services at the Capitol, that educates oncoming legislators about Native issues, the tribes in the state, federal Indian policy that matters whenever they're making legislation. And this is supposed to occur every session, but the governor's administration didn't seek priority to this, and only 10 minutes was allocated to educating the legislators on Native issues.
10 minutes?
Yeah, and so we knew stepping in there that Keith Rieger's attempt to put this legislation through was just testing the water about where they're at in Montana, about the advocacy from the tribes, the response from the media and outsiders, and the pressure was put on this Republican Party, and definitely Keith Rieger, who is part of the Freedom Caucus and is representing this outlier group, trying to force Montana into these kind of racist and discriminatory rhetoric. That there was going to be pressure put on that. Definitely, he got international.
A lot of heat.
Yeah, heat coming at him. So I
think their gauge wasn't successful.
No, I think this guy Mark Agather is the guy that actually drafted it and gave it to him. I think he was. I read I followed the rabbit hole going all the way back to 2014. These group of people that seemed to be upset about the water compacts, and they kind of saw that this was a path to try to get around all that.
That created a lot of anti-Indian sentiment, and they get a little organized. So we have like Ace and Sarah, and these people moved to our reservation specifically to fight the tribe. And so it's nothing new, especially on the Flathead when he was talking about the Homestead and the Allotment Act. Our agents were pretty much realtors, and that's prime real estate up there. So we've been dealing with this. It's racist. These people run on openly racist platforms and they win. But in certain areas. And so they can try to gauge Montana. But I think that real Montanans know that, we're all here together.
Yeah.
And then I think we have an influx of outsiders who are trying to muddy the waters a little bit, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, agreed. Like you said earlier, people watch Yellowstone too much and come here and think that's actually how it is. And it's sad because it sensationalizes the truth.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I've actually learned that a lot of people who, want to become a rancher or whatever, coming from, big city or California or whatever, come test it out and then have been selling their property and moving back. So there has been bounce back. So
it's hard.
Yeah.
Like some of the hardest working ranchers I've ever seen was like working on this documentary with Ivy and Ivan McDonald. We're watching these Blackfeet ranchers work with the bison. Yep. It's like so hot out there. These animals are incredibly beautiful and majestic, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And you're out in the sun.
It's needed, but it's a lot of work, and you really have to, know that work can be invested.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is like traditionally those bison were able to roam wherever they wanted to, but now we have to like move them from one pasture to the next to ensure that they have grazing, feed and So I mean, still this colonialist system, that we still have to work through our hoops that we have to go through.
So if someone was new to Montana who's non-tribal and wanted to experience Salish or Kootenai or Blackfeet culture, what's the best way to do that? Indian days and Browning?
Indian days.
Yeah.
That's
the outsider special. They got to get out there and dance.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on what side you're on. You got Crow and Crow Fair on that side. But I would say, the best way to experience any culture is meeting the people who are part of that community.
Yeah.
We were talking about it. There's so many beaters per capita in the reservation that the best way to show support is buying some jewelry or buying some beaded artwork from them. Or there's a lot of artists in different capacities.
Yeah.
A lot of mediums.
Yep.
And being able to show support to those local artists is something that these artists take pride in. Yeah.
Growing up here, I was fortunate that my parents were friends with a lot of some of the Blackfeet tribes. Buster Yellow Kidney, if you know that name, we used to go hang out with him a lot.
It just sounds like an Indian.
Yeah. His son is Steven, and I think there's Shauna Yellow Kidney. Really, I think they live in Missoula. But we used to go out there to the powwow all the time, and people were always just so welcoming and awesome and friendly. And I got to take my daughter and girlfriend out there this summer, and she was like, This is amazing. This is one of the most amazing American cultural experiences that I think you can experience.
Did you get an Indian taco, or what did you do?
I had a nation burger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the fried bread burger.
Indian name?
They have a huckleberry sauce there. Yeah, you got to get some huckleberries.
Yeah, but like I love the rodeo. I love going to the Blue Moon Rodeo and stuff. But the Indian relay race is insane.
It's intense.
Yeah.
It's like the coolest thing I've ever seen.
If you've never seen it before, yeah, it's really awesome. I mean, it's intense. It's a cool sport.
Yeah.
They're crazy to me.
Being up at the powwow this year, the Indian Days, they had so much going on, and then I just always grew up on powwow, so it was like kind of like, do I really walk all the way over there to the rodeo grounds when I'm here?
We missed it too. Yeah, we had a table up there for the Mika movement.
Yeah.
So we were working, but we set up by the food court. We were smart. Yeah, in between there and the new dance pavilion. So
checked out some chicken dance specials. That's what I was into. Yeah.
Awesome. I meant to get a shirt. Can I buy a shirt? Do you guys still have shirts?
Yeah, I think they still have. Like, they just have tons of stuff. They bought shirts, jackets,
I was going to buy one.
Sweaters,
I forgot to get one.
Yeah.
What is a powwow?
It's something that was created contemporary recently due to kind of like this attack on our ceremonies or cultural practices. I mean, they call it a celebration here on the Flathead because they were trying to escape the federal government crackdown on these styles of community gatherings.
Just a side note, it's still illegal. 3 or more Indians in the same place. It's called a war party in Montana.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like there's policy that's been written against us and definitely our identities and cultures. And powwows have different meanings to their communities. Some are ceremonial, and some are competitive. And there's different styles of dance and powwows, both men and women styles, specials that involve the community to partake in, and intertribals that just involve people that just want to come and dance, so there's no competition in that.
And if you're Kootenai, they're all about stick game.
Yeah, and there's stick games that occur at these powwows. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, high stake
gambling.
Gambling going on. Yeah. Where you can bet the farm even sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Dang, that's amazing. So how have programs like food sovereignty, everything from like food sovereignty to team sports, even skateboarding, like there's Jeff Ahmet, the bass player for Pearl Jam, is like building all these like amazingly epic skate parks in like super rural areas.
Lincoln Park and Tony Hawk too. Yeah.
He did Skate Ignatius for us. Oh yeah, they are too.
Yeah, and Blackfeet.
There's some good opportunities for that these nonprofits are building these, and the skate culture, hip hop culture, all provides an outlet for expression for young children, youth, and. A lot of these places definitely working in the communities. I've seen native skateboarders skating on the side of the highway, and it's like in downtown Arley, and it's like, oh my God, someone needs to build you a skate park, so you don't have to be doing this right here.
We have some talent, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
to do that, yeah.
Yeah, and those opportunities are huge for the sustainability of our communities and the health of our communities.
Yeah. And your organization does a lot of stuff with food sovereignty?
Yeah. So we've created, my wife and I, Regina, we created this plan that was presented to the CSKT tribal membership a few times, but we've used that to guide our program, People's Food Sovereignty Program, in different projects and programs that promote the sovereignty, tribal sovereignty and self-determination of the tribal community on the Flathead Reservation, which is our mission statement. And we implemented 3 programs that we've carried on now in our 3rd year. This was all started out with just a response during the COVID pandemic, experiencing, at the time I was participating in a food distribution, a mutual aid food distribution that was providing breakfast, lunch, and dinner 5 days a week to participants who came in and then this was per person per household. And so we were feeding up to 550 people at the highest peak, and we went through around $500,000 worth of funding, COVID funding, to meet the needs at the time. And during that process, Native participants were requesting traditional meats, elk, deer, medicines, and that's where People's Food Sovereignty Program was created out of that need. And we started off with a partnership with the then Department of Interior and U.S. Fish and Game, Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, a culling program out of the National Bison Range under their management. It's been since then transferred to CSKT management. But at then we collected 8 elk. We distributed those to tribal members. We created since then a hunting program where tribal members harvest meat for us, and then we pay for processing. We've started off with that, 8 elk, but this last year we killed or harvested around 30 white-tailed deer and then another 12 elk. And this is a culling program again to try to identify any chronic wasting disease in the herds, and then also providing that important cultural resource to the households. And every year we've increased our distributions. We distribute up to a month's worth of meat per household. And
well, it's amazing.
Yeah, and then this is per person in the household too. So a household of 13, which is one of our largest ones, will get like almost a whole freezer's worth of meat. And so being able to provide that resource has been we're trying to heal our traumas, our historical traumas, and fill in the gaps of kind of bringing back our traditional ecological knowledge with what we do today. But we also run a gardening bed distribution. 105 households we've distributed beds, garden beds to, and this is in collaboration with Missoula community partners who provide us seedlings and tools and other resources too, part of the project or part of the program. And then this year we're starting a farm, a seed farm, promoting Three Sisters and native medicinal plants as well.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
God, I mean, wild elk meat, there's no meat like wild elk meat. That itself is like a healing meat. There's like so much, everything you need in that.
Yeah, tribes view elk as like a warrior, like it provided that strength when they were going out for hunting or going out to battle, that the elk provided that strength through that process.
Oh, that's an amazing story. One of the things I'll always have to do if I'm driving to Missoula is stop by the Garden of 1,000 Buddas. Now, what's the story behind how the Garden of 1,000 Buddas got to be in that space? Do you guys know the story behind that?
You're gnarly.
Well, I mean, I'm from there, but
yeah. I heard it was some sort of partnership.
I thought they did, right? There was some sort of consultation, and I don't think I couldn't see our tribal elders or anyone going, no, not for.
Yeah.
We're a more welcoming place. Buddhism, is a really like more about this energy and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's really cool that, when people come here, we're like, oh, have you ever been here? And they think we're joking at first.
Yeah. It's a stop. And you tell somebody that's visiting to check out. Yeah.
You got to go there, and then you go to our bison range, and then you got to see their face as they first see the lake, coming down Polson Hill. And so it's one of those spots for us.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I think what's really cool, because I'm a film guy, like film and entertainment, and there's been a really big rise in influential Indigenous Americans making a real impact in pop culture. An impact that was paved by like Wes Studi and Graham Greene. Like Last of the Mohicans is still one of my favorite movies of all time. But now you have like Amber Midthunder, who's in Prey. You've got Lily Gladstone coming out in that new Martin Scorsese movie. What is it about Indigenous actors and filmmakers that is making them some of the leading figures in Hollywood right now?
I would say just probably our advocacy to say that we are part of or I guess maybe our fight to be part of the table, I think even just what, the individuals you named are just door openers. There's a whole community of directors and actors and, storytellers out there that want to provide their perspective, and What I would hope is that just like the first individuals who, kind of broke that stigma in Hollywood about hiring, Asian people to represent Native Americans in film, that they were the first actors doing that they provide door opening for more actors to be participant in the process and or the industry. And that's what I'm hoping for, is that it gives independent, filmmakers an opportunity to be part of the industry.
And that's great, because Montana has a really great growing film scene. I know a friend of mine works at the state level in Missoula. She helped pass the Media Act, which is like giving tax breaks to film productions, especially trying to focus on independent films. Mm-hmm. And they do a lot of grants, and they're trying to get a lot of programs into like the Flathead Reservation, the Blackfeet Reservation, to get kids like training for production assistants and just learning how the whole process works, just how to use a camera so that they can go out and just film their own stories.
Yeah, and I mean, like, been in the nonprofit sector, Native advocacy, and met Ivy and Ivan McDonald earlier in their career, and
nice
being able to see their success, and just getting behind a camera, telling their perspective. That's something that I like to see, and I hope to see more of.
They're amazing. I mean, they went to Sundance this year.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, their accolades is amazing.
So if people want more information or want to help out in any way with MMIW, what's the best way to do that? Like, how can we shine more of a spotlight and help with this crisis? Yeah,
well, right now, several of my clients actually have their own websites, and that's what we've been made to do, is we create our own campaigns for justice. So you can go to micamatters.com. But also, we'll be having a prototype come out very shortly. We're going to be talking with the Department of Justice here mid-August. And we have a really exciting product that we're going to be bringing out that will hopefully, once and for all, kind of battle this inequality and justice that we have on reservations. And so, when that comes out, we're hoping that we can put it on shows like this. We can, put it on different places, and that we'll have the people of Montana, because it's just such a huge crisis here in the state. And we're not getting a regional coordinator or a regional attorney. With our new, Merrick Garland gave us some new positions. So we're hoping, that when we come to the table with them, that we're going to be able to put out this prototype, which will be a website and application.
Cool.
So you'll have, in the future, we'll be able to come back and tell you some more about it.
Oh, I cannot wait to have you guys back.
I'd also say definitely advocating to your local politicians. There's a lot of rhetoric in Montana about, and the All Lives Matter movement has affected the MMIW crisis. And the approach from a lot of legislators is it's also happening in our communities. And when that happens, the MMIW movement is overshadowed. And certain resources only go to the non-Indian missing person. And so what we're asking for is a lot of accountability. There's also a petition for Mika, Westwolf, and we're asking the federal government, the Department of Justice, and FBI to investigate Lake County commissioners, attorney, and sheriff's offices for their long history of unsolved Native American cases, as well as asking for what was the other portion of the petition?
So we're asking for the federal probe of these lack of investigations, and then we're also asking for it to be tried federally from the FBI as a hate crime. Because as we don't know much, what we have heard, I guess, is that Sonny White, someone with ties to white supremacy here in the state, was the one who killed Mika Westwolf. Was actually rumored earlier to have been bragging about it and bragging about her kids' names who were in the car with her, Aryan and Nation. Since then, it was never charged with it. The family was told she wasn't. Since then, committed several other felonies around the state. Up here, was arrested. Received more punishment for, little things like that than murdering this Native American woman who, the cops. I just want to say really fast, when they first came in, what they did to the family is what happens a lot, and they victim blamed her. They were like, well, is she on drugs? Is she a druggie? Is she suicidal? Is she, and she was none of these things. She had been to Nepal. She loved backpacking, hiking. She was a writer. She was a musician,
Yeah.
She had plans for her life. And just to be walking home and to be an Indian is a death sentence on our reservation. And it's one that usually gets no charges. And we're going to change that now. So.
Wow. That is just heartbreaking. But I hope that this gets to our audience's ears, and so we can advocate to our representatives more. And
if you can call Steve Daines, or if you know him personally, tell him to give me a call. Erica Shelby, 406-240-8229, anytime.
Yeah, he's the only politician I think we haven't heard any response back from, so we're putting pressure on his office.
And he's on the Senate Select Committee for Indian Affairs. So
is Tester also?
Yes.
Yep.
He spoke with him at Indian Days this year.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
There's some follow-up that we have to do, definitely, to ensure that the process continues. And so, we want to make sure that definitely with Tester's office that we're meeting him where the rubber hits the road, and we can actually make some good progress in Mika's case and other issues that we're facing locally in the MMIW crisis.
Yep. Coming up on an election year.
I really hope that her death won't go in vain. So
appreciate that.
Yep. Thank you.
Anything else you guys want to talk about while we're here?
If you want to reach out to either of our organizations, Red Medicine LLC or People's Food Sovereignty Program, we're on both Facebook and Instagram. You can find our websites on those sites too as well.
Great. I will make sure that all your contacts are in the show notes for this episode. So
awesome.
Thank you guys so much for being on the show. I really hope I can have you guys here again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah.